Good afternoon. I want to welcome everyone to today's presentation, Senior Living's Financial Pilates, Strength and Agility, Ease and Simplicity. My name is Brian Beadle, co-founder of Akamar Consulting. I'm joined today by John Sabek, who is a strategic partner manager at Prophix, as well as my business partner and co-founder of Akamar, Andrew Winter. Before we get started, we'll just do a little bit of housekeeping. All attendees are muted at this time. The webinar is being recorded, and the recording link will be available within 2 business days. If you have any questions, please enter your questions into the Q&A window, as questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. A quick note, this session is eligible for CPE credit. To receive a credit, you must respond to at least 75% of the polling questions, have an accrued viewing time of at least 50 minutes, and be logged onto the webinar. And let me run through today's agenda. To begin, Andrew will give an overview of Akamar and what we provide as a business partner. John will provide an overview of Prophix. He'll discuss some of the typical challenges companies experience and what Prophix can do for you. We'll also talk a little bit about who is actually using Prophix in the senior living space. And then we'll jump into the demo. At this point, I'll turn it over to Andrew, and Andrew will talk a little bit about our company and what type of services and partnerships that we can provide. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Brian and I have been supporting accounting and FP&A operations for over 15 years. And we both believe that FP&A is literally and figuratively the future of finance. CFOs are increasingly looked upon as an internal strategic partner to provide insights and opportunities to business leaders. At Akamar, we are an end-to-end financial consulting firm partnering with small and medium-sized businesses to optimize and enable the record-to-report financial planning and analytical capabilities. We do this around 3 central pillars. We use your data to visualize a story about where your company is and where it's going, so that we can give your leadership a fact basis for decision making. Our solutions are tailored to how you run your business so that the stories resonate with your audience, and we co-create the solutions with our clients to enable iterative feedback and ensure it meets their needs. Our approach is holistic, so the people and the process and technologies must work together seamlessly. Optimizing requirements, scope, and ways of working before launching into technology implementations reduces the workload, improves system flexibility, and enhances the speed to value. We stand behind our solutions to provide long-term support, ensuring that your investment keeps pace with your business needs. So finance expectations are rapidly evolving away from the era of accounting, audit, and compliance, and FP&A is what gives finance the tools and the processes needed to drive business value to the next level. And we think today's demo is a great example and introduction to the capabilities your organization can realize today. And so, as Brian mentioned, with us today is John Sabek from Prophix. He's been there for 8 years and has been developing forecast and planning solutions for dozens of senior living customers. So, John, let's jump into the demo.
Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and steal the controls. To kick things off, I have a couple polling questions. I know there's about 40 or so of you on here. As Brian mentioned, some of you are probably chasing those last-minute CPE credits. You have to participate in 75%. So in total, there's 5. There's no right, no wrong answers. And here's the first one. What is the #1 challenge in your organization relating to FP&A? So I'm going to give it a couple seconds, and then I'll go ahead and take a look at the responses. All right, we've got a bunch of responses coming in. It looks like there's a pretty even split between planning, financial forecasting inefficiencies, and credibility, along with reporting, operational data, too little, too late. And those are really constant themes that we hear from a lot of our customers. Usually they're pulling in data from multiple source systems. The process is very manual. You have to extract that data, drop it into Excel spreadsheets, parse it out, And really, they're making decisions reactive rather than being proactive. Here's the second poll question. How do you leverage ERP data for budgeting and reporting? So once again, going to go ahead and give you guys a couple seconds. All right. So with this one, about 90% of you said that you're using a third-party tool such as Excel. There's 5% that rely solely on the ERP system, and another 5% that said, I don't use any tools for planning and reporting at all. So for those of you that replied A, maybe you want to go ahead and reach out to us as soon as possible here. All right, quick overview on Prophix, and then we're going to go ahead and dive into the demonstration. Prophix as an organization has been around since 1987, and as Brian had mentioned, we're laser focused on FPM, or financial performance management. Our company is located in Toronto, Canada. However, we have offices all across the globe. And in addition to that, we work with an exclusive partner network as well. So we've teamed up with our friends from the Ackmar company, and that has resulted in amassing over 3,000 customers in over 100 different countries. I'd say the one thing that really sets Prophix apart from other solutions that are on the market is really our seamless integrations into your source systems. So for a lot of senior living care facilities, communities, a lot of them are on Matrix Care, Point Click Care, and a whole bunch of other systems. The nice part being is that we have a tremendous amount of experience integrating to those source solutions. In addition to that, we can integrate to other systems, such as your payroll system, your CRM system, for example. From a customer service standpoint, we really like to take the white glove approach throughout the entire process. For example, when we first engage with you, what we really want to do is get an understanding of your main pain points and challenges. We'll also go ahead and sort of take that same approach throughout the entire project, and then even go live and past post implementation as well. From an industry analyst standpoint, we're highly regarded as a top solution in the mid-market, and we're covered by all the major analysts. So BPM Partners, Gartner are just a couple to name. In addition to that, I like to point people to Trust Radius and G2 Crowd. Those are basically end user review sites where you can actually go online and read about the pros and cons with any solution out there from the end user's perspective. And then lastly, Prophix is really a tool that has been designed by finance for finance. So as we jump into the demo here, you're going to see as I navigate throughout the entire product, it's all point, click, drag, drop. There's absolutely no coding or programming that's required. So a typical challenge that we see when we engage with our prospects and customers is really depicted well in this visual right here. For a lot of organizations, and also based on the poll question today, a lot of you are using Excel for reporting and planning purposes. And usually what that entails is extracting data out of your source systems, such as your ERP system, your HR system, your payroll system, maybe a CRM system. And what you're doing is dropping all that information into an Excel file or an Excel sheet. And usually what starts off as a pretty easy process when there's only a couple people involved tends to grow over time. So as organizations grow, and that could be done through acquisition or just organically, what's pretty common is that a lot of organizations will go ahead and add additional source systems. Additional people will be added to key processes, and what was manageable at one time tends to break down. And that's really where Prophix comes into play. Prophix at the end of the day is really laser focused on streamlining your entire FP&A process. And that includes everything from consolidations and reporting to analytics to modeling and planning as well. Really at its core, there's 5 key pillars within the solution itself. As you can see, I've broken them out. The first key pillar that we can talk about is budgeting and planning. So a lot of our customers come to Prophix to help them with their occupancy planning, for health services planning, meal planning, expense planning, personnel planning, operational planning, balance sheet planning, cash flow planning. Any type of planning can actually be set up and done within the product itself. In addition to that, you can actually do forecasting. And essentially a forecast now within Prophix is just another version where you're combining actuals with your remaining budget and forecast information. So some of our customers go ahead and do a semi-annual reforecast, some do quarterly. We even have customers that go in and do it a lot more frequently, so monthly or even weekly if need be. On the reporting side, so once we integrate directly into your source systems, we would go ahead and set up a scheduled cadence in terms of the refresh. a lot of our customers will go ahead and leverage Prophix for their reporting purposes. So think of this as the financial statements, so balance sheet, P&L, cash flow plan reporting, any type of performance reporting, variance reporting. All the data can actually be surfaced in self-service interactive dashboards. If users want to analyze the data, there's even a nice ad hoc feature where they can easily go in, slice and dice. Think of this similar to that of a pivot table, which we're going to walk you through as well. A huge benefit being able to actually integrate directly into your source systems is that if you're taking a look at a particular balance in any of your reports, you could simply drill across to the underlying transactions that actually make up the balances as well. And then lastly, we integrate into the Office suite of products as well. So you can actually push and pull data between Excel and Prophix along with PowerPoint as well. Another key pillar for those organizations that are multi-entity or multi-company that are dealing with various types of currencies. You may have ownership assumptions that you need to take into consideration as well. Prophix has the most robust consolidation tool out of any solution that's on the market. So you can actually do all of your consolidated reporting directly within Prophix as well. Over to the left-hand side, workflow and automation. We try to streamline as much as possible within Prophix. And that really, once again, begins with the automated integrations into your source systems. So we would go ahead and integrate directly into, for example, Matrix Care or Point Click Care. We would go ahead and set up that integration. We would schedule it. And by doing so, once again, you can rest assured that your end users are always looking at the most up-to-date and relevant information. In addition to that, a lot of our customers will go ahead and wrap a workflow if they want to drive collaboration and accountability across any process. So a lot of our customers leverage it for their budget process, their monthly reforecast, along with their month-end close-in reporting. And then lastly, we've also invested heavily into the AI component. And within the product itself, we'll walk you through some of the core functionality as it relates to anomaly detection, chart insights, task assistant, and even predictive forecasting as well. All right, another poll question here for you. Do you feel you're overly reliant on Excel for budgeting, forecasting, and planning? So I'm just going to give it a couple seconds here. And this one looks like 80% of you say yes, about 15% say sometimes, and then there's 5% that say never, I love Excel. All right, and here's just an example of some of the organizations that we work with in the senior living space. A lot of really common names. Last slide on my end here is really just the agenda in terms of what we're going to be covering for the next 30 minutes or so. We're going to start off by taking a look at the dashboarding functionality within Prophix. So we'll talk about KPIs, metrics, graphs, charts. We'll talk a little bit about the AI functionality in the form of what we call chart insights. We'll go into financial and variance type of reports. We'll talk about the drill down and drill across capability. We'll even go into ad hoc, how I can show you you can easily slice and dice your data on the fly here. And then lastly, we'll talk about report distribution as well. So if you need to produce a results deck, a weekly flash report, that all can be set up within Prophix and automatically distributed within the solution as well. Then we'll switch gears. We'll get into the planning aspect. We'll introduce the idea of workflow automation. Once again, if your main goal is to drive accountability and foster collaboration across the entire organization, this is a great way to do so. Rather than having to worry about creating Excel templates, attaching it to Outlook, and firing them off to individuals, once again, Prophix can be responsible for the distribution, input, submission, and overall approval components as well. In terms of planning templates, we'll talk about OpEx planning, personnel planning, occupancy planning, services planning, along with staffing as well. And then lastly, we'll talk about the forecasting capabilities. So once again, a forecast within Prophix is just another version where you're combining actuals with budget data. We'll talk about static budgets. We'll talk about rolling forecasts, and then we'll get into the AI predictive functionality as well. Okay, so bear with me one sec. I'm going to go ahead and change over to my other screen. And we should be able to see it change in just a second here. So first things first, as mentioned, Prophix is a web-based solution. So in terms of gaining access as an end user, you can leverage any of your favorite web browsers, such as Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Safari, all pretty common ones. What's nice is that we do support single sign-on, so it allows your end users to pass through their login credentials. Alternatively, they can also enter it by entering their username and password as well. One other thing to highlight here as well is that Prophix is device agnostic, meaning you can actually go ahead and pull up Prophix on your smartphone, your laptop, your tablet. As long as you have an internet connection at the end of the day, you have the ability to gain access into the platform. Now, from the end user standpoint, each user may have a different experience with Prophix. And what I mean by that is that when they log into Prophix, they would have their own dashboard set up. And here's just an example of one that I've put together, where you'll notice we could track our revenue, where we have it broken down by our regions. We could take a look at revenue from a total organizational standpoint. If there's specific KPIs and metrics that your organization wants to keep a close eye on, such as occupancy, incident reporting, average census, that all can be tracked directly within the dashboard as well. You know, if I scroll down, a lot of our senior living facilities like to take a look and break down revenue by the living type that they offer. So independent, assisted, long-term, memory, hospice, short-term. In addition to that, it's also super important to take a look at the payer mix as well. So breaking it up between Medicaid, Medicare, private pay, third party. So all the dashboards are fully interactive. As mentioned, we do leverage off of AI functionality in the form of what we call chart insights. So you could click on this little information icon, and Prophix will actually go ahead and provide you a brief description as to what's going on with respect to that data set. In addition to that, the graphs and charts are fully interactive as well. So for example, in this case, it's easy to see that we have some unfavorability coming from our health services department, in which case we could click anywhere on this chart. And what Prophix will actually go ahead and do is drill down into our little hierarchy for us. Okay, so in this case, really to see that majority of the variance is coming from our nutrition department. What's really neat is that if we want to take things one step further, we can actually right click, select the little link, and Prophix will surface any type of report that's linked to that particular visual. In terms of look and feel, the format of the report is totally up to you. As you can see, you can include logos, charts. There could be a section that's set up to capture commentary. In addition to that, once again, you could use conditional formatting to highlight exceptions. A huge benefit with respect to the reporting functionality within Prophix is the fact that when you go ahead and create that one report, it can be utilized and leveraged across the entire organization. So we have these drop downs here on the left-hand side. I could come in, select another department. Below that, I have another drop down for the months. And as I go ahead and do so, Prophix will go ahead and render the data that's associated with our selection here. Okay. Keep in mind, security blankets this aspect of the product as well. So once again, you could go ahead and create this one report. You could push it out to all of the managers, and they will only be able to see the information that their security permissions allows them to do so. In addition to that, any of the reports can actually be exported out of Prophix. To do so, you would simply go to the file dropdown, select the preferred format. Here, you could select to export all the reports. You could select the current page. You can remove pages with no data as well. Okay, as you make your selection, once again, Prophix will go ahead and export it into that specific format. A couple other things with respect to the actual reports. They're also fully interactive. So in our example, if we want to further analyze, our travel variance, in this case, what a user can actually do is right-click, select Analyze, and Prophix will go ahead and strip away the formatting of the report and bring you into what we call ad hoc analysis. To provide you a little context, the best way to describe ad hoc is that it's similar to that of the pivot table. However, from your end user standpoint, you don't have to worry about extracting data sets out of your ERP or any of your source systems, dropping that information into an Excel template, and then overlaying a pivot table on top of that. In this case, if we want to drill down into our travel variance, we could simply hit the little plus icon. And once again, Prophix will go ahead and drill down into that. So in this case, we can see majority of the variance is actually coming from lodging and airfare. Our next logical question might be, what department's driving this variance? And what they can actually do is grab the department from the left-hand side here, drop it into the canvas, and Prophix will actually go ahead and swap the two out. So super, super easy, super intuitive. Let's say we want to take a look at our monthly actuals. We come in, drop our months on our actuals, and once again, Prophix will swap the two out. Then you could always utilize the drop downs as pick lists and toggle between the different options that are available to you. Okay. This also speaks to the idea of that one single source of truth, right? When we integrate directly into your source systems, we would set up that scheduled cadence refresh. You'll notice that there's no formulas, no calculations that exist. what we do as a starting point is we would take a look at the hierarchies as they would relate to things such as your department structure, your cost center structure, organizational structure, along with your accounts. And that becomes the foundation of how we would go ahead and set up within Prophix to provide this inherent capability to drill down into your data. If you ever want to go back to a previous view, you could always toggle back. And last thing that I want to point out is that if you're analyzing your data and you want to take things one step further, you could always right-click, select drill across. And once again, this is where Prophix is going to go ahead and pull up all the underlying transactions that make up that particular balance. And if you have a image system that's able to go ahead and generate the URL link, we can actually include the hyperlink within our drill across to allow your user to get down to that level of detail without ever leaving Prophix. Okay. So closing out of here real quickly. From a reporting standpoint, another key thing to mention here as well is a lot of our customers will go ahead and leverage Prophix to do their financial reporting. And this could be for their P&L, their balance sheet, their cash flow statement. Here's just an example of a report that I created. You notice it's a nice snapshot of your balance sheet, cash flow, P&L all within one nice view. You can roll up your net income into your cash flow statement, then take into consideration items from your balance sheet to model out cash from operations, investments, financing, and essentially come up with your end of period cash balance. What's nice is that this is the summary level view. If somebody actually wants the details, they could simply right click, select linked template, and Prophix will go ahead and actually surface the detailed report that sits right behind that summary. Okay, closing out of that real quick. And then the last thing that I want to talk about with respect to reporting is the fact that within Prophix, you can actually go ahead and create what we call report binders. So if you need to put together a month-end results deck, a board presentation, maybe it's weekly flash reports where you want to go ahead and combine different reports into an overall package. The nice part about Prophix is you could select the reports. You're not limited just to Prophix reports. If there's content that might be in Word, PowerPoint, PDF, Excel format, you can actually go ahead and attach that as well. Simply go ahead, hit the little plus icon, find where you have it saved, and Prophix will go ahead and attach it. To the right of that is your distribution list. This is where you could come in, you could select individuals, you could select groups, and once again, they would automatically be added to the distribution list here. And then you could schedule a cadence. So if this is something you want sitting in everybody's inbox Monday, 9 a.m., once again, Prophix will go ahead, send out the report, and it'll actually go to the extent of parsing out the contents so that each user only receives the information that their security permissions allows them to do so. All right, within my dashboard, if we turn our attention to the right-hand side here, you'll notice a section called My Tasks. So Prophix, as mentioned during the overview, has workflow capability for organizations that want to drive collaboration and accountability down to specific stakeholders. When they would log in, they would come to this section and they would see anything that they're responsible for completing. You know, some budget owners may have one task, some may have a handful. What's pretty neat, if they click on the three dots, they could launch this little rocket ship. They have one nice view here where they could take a look at what they have on the go. Anything that they miss will show up within the overdue section. And as they go ahead and complete items, they'll actually show up within the completed area here. Okay, so real easy. They could click on a task and Prophix will go ahead and pull up the respective template that they're required to fill out. Now, when it comes to OpEx planning, we usually see this a number of different ways. Usually organizations are planning by department, by cost center, by community, by facility, region, territory, or any combination of that. In today's demo, we're planning by our different departments. So we have nutrition, physician, and physical therapy that all roll up into health services. Within our rows, we have our different accounts. Right, and these would be the accounts that you have set up within your ERP system. And then within our columns are our time. So if you're planning at the monthly level, you could have months. Some of our customers plan quarterly, some plan semi-annually, some just plan at the annual level. You'll notice if I scroll over to the right-hand side here, I could pull in my prior year actuals as a reference point, my September outlook. Totally up to you. I've placed these columns at the back of the template. You could place them at the beginning. I always stress look and feel is totally up to the organization. Now, from an input standpoint, extremely straightforward. A user can come in, enter in a value directly into the template, and Prophix will automatically go ahead and recalculate the subtotal along with the annual total for the account as well. There's some real neat features with respect to being able to adjust data in bulk. So for example, let's say I'm taking a look at the first quarter's worth of our office expense, and maybe we anticipate now that everybody's back in the office or the department, that this is going to go ahead and increase by 2%, let's say. I can go ahead and hit OK. And once again, Prophix will go ahead and recalculate our subtotals along with our annual total as well. Now, let's say I'm not too concerned about profiling and entering in values at the monthly level, but I know my office expense for the year is going to run me about $100,000. I can actually enter in the one value. And as soon as I do so, Prophix is smart enough to realize we've entered in a value for the entire year. And it'll ask us how we want to go ahead and push it down to the monthly level. So a couple options out of the gate that are defaults and pretty straightforward. Spread evenly takes the total and allocates it evenly across the 12 periods. The second option, spread based on existing. Within Prophix, there's a nice large copy and paste feature, which allows you to roll over your prior year budget or your prior year actuals or a forecast scenario as a starting point, in which case it'll respect the seasonality that's in that template and update it proportionately. If we want to get super powerful, we can actually go into the show more section here. And now this is where a user can actually come up and define their own spread method. So for organizations that want their expenses to reflect that of their revenue, they could come in and select a particular revenue account, for example. If we go to these spread factors, let's say there's statistical data that you want to go ahead and utilize. The nice part about Prophix is that you can actually store that information directly within the model as well. So for example, maybe you have FTE data, headcount, square footage information, the number of patients that come through or serviced, utilization rates. All that information can now be stored within Prophix. Let's say you want to base it on your actual scenario. You could come in, select a particular account, select a version. You could even come in, select time. So we all know the past couple of years have been a bit of an anomaly. Let's say we want to go back to 2018, for example. I could come in, I could select time, I could select a version and an account, and on the fly come up with my own spread. The one thing that I really want to stress where Prophix is really different than other solutions out there is that there's absolutely no programming. There's no calculations that you need to set up. This really speaks to the idea of leveraging the underpinning data within your model. And now this is an inherent capability that's available to all your end users. In other solutions that are on the market, the way that this would be done is typically done through a macro or a calculation that resides and is hidden somewhere within the actual template. So really, really easy, really, really intuitive from the end user standpoint. No programming, no coding. They could come create their own. They could select from one of the defaults. And Prophix will automatically go ahead once again and update that template. All right. Now, let's say planning at the account level is not enough. You want the details. If we turn our attention to the advertising account, you'll notice little blue triangles in the lower right-hand corners. And what that signifies is that I can't just enter in a value directly into the cell. Okay, there's this little prompt that'll appear. You would simply hit OK, and Prophix will pull up this separate schedule. So now you could come in, you could plan at the granular level. You could force your end users to provide you with the description, a justification. There's even a section for additional commentary as well. So you can make this mandatory for some accounts, optional for others, totally up to you in terms of where you want to go ahead and turn this on and off. All right, let's close out of there. Making our way up this template. Here's the perfect example of a centralized calculation. So in my example, our dues expense is a byproduct of our FT value and our rate. The one thing that you'll notice is that when I click on the cell, that there's no formulas that are hidden. Once again, a user would provide you with the inputs, and Prophix will automatically go ahead and recalculate that value. The big benefit of this is that if you have a number of people that are providing you with inputs, you can rest assured that the exact same logic is being applied consistently across the entire organization. Now, making our way all the way to the top, probably one of the most important lines on any operating expense is the payroll section. You'll notice that it's currently blank. What we're going to do now is jump back out to the workflow. This is where I'm going to go ahead and click on my personnel planning task. So some organizations, for people that reside at the corporate level, or if they know that they have full-time employees that have been with the organization for a long time, what they'll tend to do is actually plan down to the named employee level. So this is where we can actually pull in data from ADP, Paylocity, Ultipro, bring that all into a personnel model within Prophix. And then what we would go ahead and do is build out a schedule similar to the one that I have here. So you'll notice we can include the employee ID, the name of the individual, the hire date, end date, the community that the individual works at, the department, and then we get into all the payroll related attributes as well. Okay. You can factor in, whether the individual's paid annually or hourly. Essentially, all those different attributes drive your calculations as they relate to things such as earnings, benefits, increases, and taxes. If I go ahead and expand on them, once again, you'll notice that they're broken down to the monthly level, and we can actually accommodate any type of payroll cycle that you're on. So some organizations are on weekly, some are on semi-monthly, some are on a 544 calendar. Once again, those are just different attributes that we take into consideration from a planning standpoint. And in my example, we're modeling out earnings, benefits, increases, taxes. If there's any calculations that are unique to your organization, once again, we would go ahead, sit down with you, and then set those out. Keep in mind, this is all part of the workflow. So let's say I'm responsible for the first pass. Andrew might be the approver. All I would go ahead and do is hit the little submit button. And what would happen is Andrew would receive an email within his inbox with a link to this template, in which case he could come in, approve it, reject it, or we could even have back and forth commentary between us as well. Once he's satisfied with it, all he would do is hit the little update button, and then Prophix will go ahead and feed this information now at the summary level back into our operating expense template. So I could come back out to this template, hit the little refresh, and you'll notice now the payroll appears in its respective GL accounts. Okay, so one of the key things with respect to the way Prophix works from an aggregation standpoint is that there's no aggregating, there's no manual process to link templates or spreadsheets or workbooks together. In this case, when I go ahead and select our health services department, it's going to go ahead and roll up the values from those three different teams into that one overall view. What's nice is if you ever need to do a top side adjustment, a user could come in, enter in that value. Let's say we anticipated the office expense for the entire health services department would be $50,000. I could enter in that value. As soon as I hit enter, Prophix is going to ask us how we want to push it back down to our three different teams here. And once again, the exact same spread methods are available to you. So we could create our own. We could select from one of the defaults, hit OK. And in this case, 50 divided by 3, we should see about now $16,000 allocated to our different departments here. There we go, 16,667, and we'll see the exact same amount in nutrition as well. And very last thing that I want to highlight here is that if you wanted to ever take a look at how data has changed within a cell, we have complete data history. So a user can right click. Prophix actually creates a log where it tracks the name of the individual, the date and time the change was made, how the value changed. And if you actually spread data, it actually tells you the spread logic that was utilized as well. And then from a versioning standpoint, we know that it's never one and done. Usually organizations are having to go ahead and produce multiple different iterations. Within Prophix, you can actually go ahead, create as many different scenarios, model out different assumptions, create those variance versions as well. If you ever want to analyze them side by side, you can actually right click, jump back into ad hoc analysis, and once again, stack those versions side by side really, really quickly. Okay. So keep in mind, this is all part of that workflow as well. So once an end user is satisfied with their inputs, their comments, all they would do is hit the little submit button, and Prophix will go ahead and fire off this template to the respective approver. Let's close out of here real quick. Let's jump into forecasting. So a forecast within Prophix is essentially just another version where, once again, what we're doing is we're combining actuals with remaining budget data. Okay, actuals are being fed in from your source system. So this could be coming in from Matrix Care, Point Click Care, Intact. They become locked down, so users can't make any changes or edits. If something doesn't look right, they can always right-click, select drill across, and Prophix will go ahead and surface the underlying transactions. But now where they can actually make changes and edits is where I've shaded these cells in yellow. They could come in, enter in new values. They could adjust data in bulk. They can even do those top-level spreads as well. So all the exact same functionality that we spoke about earlier, is available to them within the forecast template. And then once again, they got the drop downs where they could come in, select a particular department, and they could go ahead and create as many different scenarios as well. Real quickly on the topic of predictive forecasting. So this is where we actually leverage off of AI functionality to provide forecasting capabilities that are predictive. Within Prophix, there's a couple different methods that we could base it off, such as ARIMA, Holt Winters, and Best Fit. What you would do within Prophix is essentially set up the respective process. And what's really, really nice is how easy it is to actually go ahead and set up the actual predictive process within Prophix. Essentially, all you're doing is telling Prophix exactly what you want to go ahead and make the adjustment to. So in my example, I'm saying, hey, Prophix, let's go ahead and apply the predictive forecast to our operating expenses for our actuals, for our product marketing department, for this particular entity. And we want to go ahead and leverage data that dates back to January 2021. Okay. And then what we're doing is basically telling which forecast model that we want to go ahead and apply it to, what version, and for what duration. So in my example, we're going to go ahead and utilize that historical information to go ahead and update the 9 months remaining for that particular year. The one thing that I do want to stress with respect to any sort of AI or predictive forecasting that you're doing, it really comes down to making sure that your historical information is accurate, right? So all these predictive tools, what they're doing is basing it on historical data. So if your historical data is not clean, there is a good chance that whatever it's going to go ahead and return as a result is going to be inaccurate. So a lot of times what we tell our customers is to ensure that they go in and they cleanse the data to make sure that, once again, it's accurate. And by doing so, it provides them the best ability to leverage the predictive forecasting functionality within Prophix here. So if we go back out to our template here, let's see, should have ran. We should see the line of best fit in just a second. There we go. You see it's populated our predictive forecast best fit line, and then it's actually gone ahead and allocated that across all of our expense items as well. All right. Now switching gears, let's close out of the OpEx templates here. Let's talk a little bit about the revenue side of things. So a lot of our senior living facilities will go ahead and leverage Prophix to do their capacity planning. And here's just a really good example that is pretty consistent and common across a lot of the organizations that we work with. The nice thing within Prophix is you can really get down to any level of detail. So in my example on the left-hand side here, you'll notice that we can plan by the various types of communities that we have. We even could break it down based on the housing type. So independent, assisted, long-term, memory, hospice, short-term. And then within my template, we have the different types of rooms that we provide. So private apartment, 1 bedroom, private apartment, 2 bedroom, 1 bath, semi-private, private bachelor studio. And then as you can see, what we're doing is we're taking into consideration the beginning number of residents. We're applying any new admissions. We can take into consideration any leaves or discharges. That essentially comes up with our census balance. And then we could actually go ahead and apply the applicable rates that are associated with those particular room options. That all then drives your rooming revenue. And once again, you can leverage all those in a driver-based calculation to come up with your overall occupancy percentage as well. Keep in mind, this is an input template. You can enter in values directly into this template itself. You know, sometimes organizations will actually go ahead and create a separate template. So for example, you could have a capacity planning template where you're factoring in the number of rooms that are available across the various types of care types, again, across all of your communities as well. Now let's close back out of that. Also, really key item for a lot of organizations in the senior living and healthcare space pertains to health services planning. So a lot of these facilities offer various types of programs that relate to, say, massage, physical therapy, physician care, and nutrition. And really what we're doing here is, once again, planning by the number of patients, the average time that translates into per patient hours. We could factor in the capacity that we have available, We break that down to a rate per hour. That then drives overall the patient revenue that's associated with it. And in this case, once again, if it's a service that's covered by Medicaid, Medicare, private pay, third party, we could even go down to that level as well. Because in that case, there's usually different rates that are associated with those various type of payer types. And keep in mind, you could come in and model out as many different assumptions. You could play around with different levers, model out best case, base case, worst case scenarios. But all this data now resides within one central location. At any point in time, if you want to go ahead and analyze it, you could jump back into ad hoc analysis to slice and dice that information. And then on the labor side, so when it comes to staffing, a lot of organizations will go ahead and do their staff resource planning directly within Prophix here as well. So just to give you an idea, this is an example of a template that I've built out where you'll notice you can actually plan by the type of staff that's required. In my example, we have our LPNs, registered assistants, nurse practitioners, and registered nurses. We could break it down by our different shifts, right? And then once again, this could be done across all of our different communities. All that information is all driver-based, so we could come up with our monthly census data, right? We could factor in the number of days in a month. We could break that down to an average daily census, and then we could translate that into what that equates to from an hours per resident day. And we can even take a look utilizing conditional formatting to see where we're either overstaffed or understaffed. And if we're understaffed, that would then make, in that case, we may want to go ahead and make assumptions and add additional employees or hours to make sure that we're covered off. And then once again, you could factor in the rates that are associated with these particular staff, right? And you could even factor in premiums if it's, say, the night shift. And then that translates to, once again, overall salary and wage as well. Closing out of this, the very last thing that I want to highlight here real quick really pertains to cash flow planning. Obviously, a super important topic for a lot of organizations. Within Prophix, I'm going to go ahead and pull up the example of the template here. What's really nice is that if you ever need to get down to the granularity, let's say you plan your cash flow based on the direct method, within Prophix, we can actually go ahead and plan down to the receipt and disbursement level. What we would do is we would integrate directly into your AP, AR subledger. We'd factor in all the various types of invoice terms, whether they be receivable or payable, broken down by your vendors and customers. And all that information then could be taken into consideration. So, if we want to go ahead and tighten up our receivables, we may want to model out what happens if we go ahead and change it from 60 to 30 days. If we want to extend our payables, once again, we could push that out. We could play around with all those different assumptions. So once again, all this information is being pulled in directly from your APA or subledger. We could scope this data. Obviously, we want to take into consideration transactions that are material. We're not too concerned about, little expenses here and there. So we would go ahead and scope it for transactions that are material. And then all we would do is go ahead, hit update. And now this information will actually then be pushed into our overall cash flow forecast here. And there you go. You'll notice that it'll actually show up within our template now. All right. I feel like I'm going a mile a minute here. We've covered, I'd say, everything that was on today's agenda here. Andrew, does it make sense to go ahead and turn things over to you and see if there's any questions at this time?
Sure. We do have some questions that have been raised.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, say that again, Joe?
No, I was just saying if there's any questions that came within the actual chat here as you're monitoring it, we could go ahead and address them.
Sure. Yeah, one of the questions that was raised is how long a typical implementation will take.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is actually probably a good question for you guys, knowing that you have extensive implementation experience with Prophix. Typical, when we talk about implementations, we're not talking weeks or months. On average, a typical implementation for Prophix is anywhere between 25 to 30 days.
Okay. We had another user ask about, do end users need to know or be good at Excel to use Prophix?
That's another great question. So the answer to that is absolutely not. So as you can see, Prophix is a web-based tool. And as we were navigating through the demonstration, everything that an end user would do would be done via point, click, drag and drop. There's absolutely no code or anything like that. If you do have that Excel experience, that's great. Everything within Prophix has that Microsoft look and feel to it. So if you were to go under the covers with me and I could show you how to create a report at a later date, it is the exact same way you would do so with an Excel, with the added benefit of reports being dynamic. So when you go ahead and create one, it can be leveraged across the entire organization.
Yep. And of course, there's also the Prophix add-in to Excel, right? That allows users to also work within the Excel interface directly too. That's where they choose to do their work.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Cool. See, look through the list here. Here's an interesting question about leveraging Prophix to optimize inventory of PPE. So this is going back to kind of some of the difficulties with the pandemic, right? Supply chain snarls, a lot of equipment needed, but not necessarily in the right location.
Yeah, I think there was actually a number of our customers that actually built out equipment and inventory models where they were able to go ahead and track inventory balances. And I believe it was Mission Health that was able to go ahead and then reallocate some of the PPE across the various communities. At the end of the day, Prophix is a modeling tool. So if there's anything that you need to model out, whether it be inventory, financial information, revenue, rooms, as long as there's some business logic behind it, we can actually go ahead and create that within Prophix.
Okay. Kind of go back, I think, to a point you had raised a little bit earlier in the webinar, and you alluded to the integration with some of the operating systems. So the question raised about, besides Matrix Care, our ERP system, can Prophix integrate to other source systems? So operational systems, obviously the ERP itself, right? But and you talked a little bit about the metrics too, right? Which might be sourced from those.
Yeah, so that's a great question. The nice part about Prophix is the fact that it is system agnostic, meaning we can actually integrate to any source system, systems that are out there. Pretty common ones in the senior living space, once again, are Matrix Care and Point Click Care. However, we integrate into Intact, GP, BC, all of the major ERP solutions out there. In addition to that, we can integrate to, CRM systems, payroll systems. As long as there's data that resides somewhere and we have the ability to grab it, whether that be through an ODBC connection or an API or even flat file, we could pull that information into Prophix.
Very nice. Another attendee has asked a question about a rolling forecast. There's some discussion within their company to move from an annual budgeting process to more of a rolling forecast process. So how does Prophix help to support rolling forecasts?
Yeah, amazing question. So I think that's a really big or really common theme or trend nowadays, where a lot of organizations are really realizing that, what ends up happening is they put a lot of effort into, putting together an annual budget or an annual plan. And then within the first 2 months out of the new year, it's irrelevant. So a lot of them are actually going towards a rolling forecast, and essentially a rolling forecast within Prophix is just another version where you're combining actuals that are fed directly in from the source system with that remaining budget for forecast data. And you can do, a 13-month forecast, 15-month, 18, 24-month, 36. It is totally up to you in terms of how far out you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. Another attendee has asked about consolidations. So how does Prophix support consolidation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for a lot of our customers that are dealing with multi-entities or multi-companies, they might have the requirement where they need to actually consolidate at the total parent company. Prophix has an extremely robust consolidation functionality within the tool to accommodate making adjusting entries, elimination entries. We could factor in multi-currencies. We could do the translation on that. If there's ownership assumptions, we can actually take that into account as well. So we can actually do the consolidations directly within Prophix. In other cases, we can actually just leverage Prophix to do the post-consolidations reporting.
Nice. Now we're coming up towards the end of our time here. One more question that I saw was, so has Prophix done any surveys or collected any metrics about the realized value of FP&A tools for the senior living industry?
Yeah, we have a number of case studies that we've done, and a lot of it actually results in yield management, optimization of rental rates, increased revenue, improved over liquidity ratios, decreasing G&A costs to avoid cost avoidance. Really, it's streamlining all those various aspects, centralizing all that data within one location, and then being able to monitor it and being proactive rather than reactive. For a lot of organizations, once again, that are living in Excel or they don't have a reporting or planning solution, all that manual work needs to be done, and it starts by extracting that data from their source systems, dropping it into Excel. We hear some customers tell us that it takes them like 15 days to actually close the books, right? So just as they're closing the books for the previous month, they're working on the current month's month-end tasks. So they really don't have that time where they can actually analyze the data. And that's really the huge benefit of being able to integrate directly into the source systems, surface that data in these easy to read, easy to follow dashboards, and have it be up to date where you can actually make changes on the fly if need be.
Excellent.
I think there's one more polling question, correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. So what pain points do you have that could be addressed with a platform like Prophix? I'm just going to give it a couple seconds here. And this one was pretty interesting. Majority of the people went with all the above. So it sounds like what we've talked about really resonated well with respect to the manual effort, the error-prone spreadsheets, and just the overall timeliness that it takes to wrap up reporting and planning. Another question here. My organization is interested in making an investment in a CPM solution. Just give it a couple seconds. And this one's actually pretty evenly split across A, B, and C. All right. I guess, Andrew, you can take us home here.
Well, John, we very much appreciate your time to jump in and give us an in-depth review of Prophix, especially for the senior living industry. We know you've got a lot of great experience with that. And we appreciate that you're bringing that experience to this webinar and sharing it with us. So, and I want to thank everyone who's attended. We hope you found this very helpful, and we look forward to hearing from anyone with any additional questions. Anyone who would like to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out to Brian or myself. Our emails and phone numbers are here on the slide. And so if you think that Prophix is a potential option to fix some of the challenges that you're facing with your FP&A process today, by all means, let us know. We'd be happy to look specifically at your challenges and how we can get you over the hurdles that you're facing today. Brian, do you have anything else that you'd like to add?
I just want to thank everybody for their attendance, and this, again, like I mentioned earlier, this webinar will be available in the next couple of days as a recorded webinar, and you can pass it along to those in your organization that might find benefit from it. And we do look forward to the opportunity to be able to meet with you and see how we can custom fit a solution that will take your organization to the next level. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much.